You are listening to the Southwestern American Choral Directors Association Connections podcast, where we will interview choral directors, leaders, and movers and shakers within our region. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Wall. We hope you enjoy these conversations. Please like and subscribe this YouTube channel for future content. Hello, friends of SWACDA. Today we get to connect with Dr. William George-Twyman. He currently serves as the Head of Choral Studies at the world-renowned Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts in Dallas ISD in Texas. He teaches 5 choirs, music theory, conducting, and integration of abilities, as well as being the Assistant Music Conservatory Director over curriculum and instruction. As always, I'll post the rest of his bio in the description of this video. I encourage you to go and take a look. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation today with Dr. William George-Twyman. Okay. So we are here with William George-Twyman. And William, will you start us out by talking a little bit about yourself and tell us about your musical upbringing and your influences?
Yeah. My name is William George-Twyman, is my hyphenated last name. I am currently the Director of Choral Activities at Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts in Dallas, Texas. I grew up in the Dallas area, DFW area, in Mesquite. I was a private school kid. I was not a public school educated kid. I was a private school kid. I had really great musical experiences at each level, at elementary school, middle school, high school, all those 3 stages. I had some really great music teachers, not just singing teachers, but also I had a great band director and all kinds of stuff. And so I originally thought that I was going to be a band director when I started out. When I started in college, I was going to be general music education, but I was kind of leaning towards band. And then I realized kind of midway through, I was like, actually band's great and I love it, but there were certain skill sets that a band director needed to have that I didn't, like the technical fixie instrument kind of knowledge. I didn't have it. And I wasn't going to get it because I'm terrible with tools and I'm terrible with my hands in minute sort of situations. So I was like, so the choir director at the time was like, hey, come over and sing with us and you have a good time. You have a good voice. You enjoy it. And I was like, sure, let's try it. I ended up really liking it, taking to it. And so I went to Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky for my music education degree. And then right out of undergrad, I went right to my first master's in conducting at Butler in Indianapolis. I studied with Henry Leck and Eric Stark there. And it was great. And I learned a lot. And I was very young. And I had burned myself out on school at that point because I had been in school pretty much constantly since I was in like pre-K up through a first master's degree. So I was like, I got to take some time away from the field. I don't have the juice to do it. And so I spent 10 good years out of the field of music doing various other things just to have a break. I still sang. I kept a church job that whole time, but I ended up coming back to Dallas and teaching for a year at a high school here, the high school I went to actually. And then I went I said it was time for me to go and finish because I had made a promise to myself when I was a young kid that if I was going to go to school, I was going to go as far as I could in whatever field I chose. And so I knew I wanted to finish and get a doctorate, but I also knew that I had been out of the field for a long time and I needed to kind of work myself back up to not only singing at a good level, but also just remembering how to just read. I had forgotten how to read academic texts and stuff. So I went and got another master's degree at the University of Notre Dame. I got a sacred music degree there, and I went and finished at the University of Oklahoma. I went and did my doctorate there. Finished coursework in 2016. Went and got the job at Booker T. And I thought, I told myself that lie that we all tell ourselves, like, oh, I'll totally write my document while I'm teaching full time. It'll be easy. I'll write in the evenings, not realizing that, the life of a high school teacher is just, you get off of school and then you're like, I must go sit down. And then you don't write. But I did finish eventually due to the pandemic in 2020. So yeah, I've been a musician I've been training as a musician for a really long time. It's just kind of felt like a just continuous kind of a thing, but it's always been something that I've been super interested in. And I just happen to be good at it, but also be in an environment that allowed me to sort of take some time and explore it and be good at it.
Man, that's very cool. Just to know your entire path. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but we share Mesquite as our formidable years. I grew up in Mesquite.
That's funny. I did too. So
Yeah.
I don't think we ever talked about that, but that's funny.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us a little bit about your role for Southwestern ACDA and what your involvement is and what you're looking forward to.
Very cool. So this is my second term as the Repertoire and Resources Chair for High School Mixed. And so in that role, I am kind of a point person in our region for high school conductors, teachers who, if they have any questions, just random questions that they don't know who to ask about it, what should I be singing? Or I need a piece for, tenor bass ensemble and percussion and something. Do you know anything? And I'll be like, oh, sure, I can help you find something out in that way. I also help by running reading sessions in the fall, just to give people an idea of here's some things that I have found and put together that I think are good, solid choices for us at this level. And then I assist at the convention, the every other year regional convention, by assisting in intro sessions. I ran a panel at Southwest last year, kind of an impromptu sort of roundtable sort of thing that was really interesting. And so I just it's one of those duties sort of pop up and you sort of pivot into things that you're interested in that you might be good at. But also then people will ask you to do something that you're like, oh, I would never have thought to do that. Let me try that and see if I'm good at that. So those are some things, and like something new that's we're just incorporating for the upcoming 2024 Denver convention is are the immersion days for the different levels. And so on the senior high level, me and a couple of other people in the region are working on a pretty interesting high school immersion day on how to setting down who you are as a conductor and learning how to leverage that into conference talks or professional development sessions or something like that. So we're just kind of figuring out what does membership need in this level? What have they been asking us for, and trying to design things that they want and need and like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember last conference, I was intercession chair. So I remember that pivot that we had to make for those roundtables. And I appreciate you guys being so versatile to be able to do that. And you're doing that again for these immersion days. And I think it's going to be an awesome immersion day experience for our membership. So very cool.
Yeah.
So what is a piece of music that maybe you think would best embody your personality?
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be choral. It can be anything.
I know. Yeah, this is a tough one. From a choral standpoint, the piece that a lot of people associate with me, at least my students do anyway, is Dale Worland's Always Singing. It's a piece that when I was doing my doctorate, I got a chance to do a masterclass with Dr. Worland on that particular piece. And I sang it under him, and then I got to conduct it a little bit. And, Dale Worland's just an incredible person anyway, but he provided us all with like his marked score, which looks like an incredible jumbly mess because he's a real, intense, like scribbly kind of conductor when it comes to that stuff. But he gave it to me and he signed a copy of it. And he was like, you should really keep this piece with you and do it as much as you can, because it's important to sort of keep these things going. And so I've done it every year since then. It's a piece that I do with my students. That's one of those, anybody who's ever been in a high school choir or in a college choir, you have those pieces that everybody knows, but because you've taught it so much, but every time you perform it, it's just a little bit different because everybody's learned it just a little bit differently. And so this piece for me has been a nice continuous thing to teach all my students. And my favorite thing about it is that it's a piece of standard rep. And so, but you don't get it that early. Like most high schools don't see that. And so I always love when my high school kids go away and go to college, and then they'll either text me or send me messages or something, be like, hey, look what's in our folder. And it'll be that piece. And everybody in my section wants to know how I already know it. I'm like, that's the mystique of choir. You can act like you're a totally mysterious person and you just know this rep when in fact you just did it before. So it's one of my favorite pieces of music. I just love it. The message is great. The key is great. Like there's so much good stuff in it that it's just one of my favorite things.
Awesome. So, okay. So that leads me then to the next question of what's your desert island choral piece? So only one that you can have with you until you're saved.
Oh man, only one that I can have with me until I'm saved. This would be Bach Motet 1, because it was the first piece of music that I sang as a collegiate singer. Like when I went in, that was the first piece they gave us as like, so I'm like a freshman coming out of a really good, pretty high level choral program, but nothing like that. And so I sat down and it just totally rocked my whole brain. And every time I do it, every time I listen to it, every time I analyze it, every time I just sit with it, I find something new in it because there's so much just packed in it that I could just listen to it all the time. And that's the one that I would pick.
I love
That's
it.
a really nerdy answer. I'm sorry. That's a
no,
terrible.
no, I love it. I love that. Yeah, that's the one that you would never tire of.
No,
Yeah.
no. And that's the one, it's that piece that comes up in all spheres of everywhere, and everybody does it. It's always appropriate everywhere. High school kids sing it, lifelong choir people sing it, college people sing it. It's just something that you can bond over that piece because everybody has a story about that piece, I think. But
right, absolutely. Yeah. So then let's talk about your programming philosophy. Do you have a particular programming philosophy, and how would you describe that?
So my thing is there are 8 components to a really good concert, in that there needs to be, when you're programming, you have to have something for your head, your brain, your heart, your voice, the choir, the conductor, the audience, and there's like one other thing that you need. But it's like you try to get something that hits something educationally and musically for everybody. Like everybody's not going to love every piece, right? And that's okay, because you're going to find something in it. Somebody will find something in a piece that they like. And so if you try to hit as broad spectrum as you can, and sometimes pieces overlap, and the intellectual piece can sometimes be the weird piece, which can also be the crowd pleaser, kind of stuff like that. So I really like to go at all angles with programming, in that try to find connections between pieces that normally wouldn't sit next to each other on a bus, right? And you can do that either through poet kind of stuff, textual relationships between things. You can do it key relationship wise. I did a program a couple of years ago that was synesthetically based, and so we did it from a color idea, starting from one side of the spectrum, moving to the other ones with keys, so we can kind of explain stuff like that. So I'm all for programming weird things that make people go, wait a minute, I've never heard that before, I've never heard that way before, right? It's fine to do that. And another thing that I like to do with programming is that I just want to make sure that everybody leaves the experience, be it the rehearsal experience or the performance experience, just thinking about the choral art in a different way. Like, we've all been to kind of your standard park and bark kind of choral concerts, and they're fulfilling and they're lovely, but there's so much more that we can do with it, and so much more that we can say with the art form. And I like watching other people, and I like stealing from other people when it comes to that. If there's a conductor that you like that's doing interesting programming things, do what they're doing, copy some of the stuff that they're doing, and put your spin on it so you can figure it out, and you can say, oh, I'm participating in kind of the leading edge or forward moving kind of thinking in our programming. Like one of the things, and this is a prediction, this is me being kind of a sort of a tinfoil hatty kind of choral person, but we are on an edge of a shift in programming ideas. and the college people are really leading it. And I'm thinking in the next few years, we're going to go back to, or we're going to kind of move back to concerts where the pitch, a pitch is given at the beginning, and then you just get 60 minutes of straight choral music with like changes in spatial relationships, but we're not doing a whole bunch of like, everybody said, we're not doing that really anymore, because time is precious and we got to pack as much music in short time as possible. But B, just our ideas of what we like are changing as a society. And so as musicians, as conductors specifically, we have to adjust, and we have to start doing some strange-o, weirdo kinds of things, because our audiences are changing. So my programming is always going to be what is happening in the world that we can address with choral music in a way that people aren't going to be expecting it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And you got snaps all around from me for, the programming weird things.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, you brought one of the weirdest pieces of music to my choir room one time. And we talked about it for months after that. And it was just great. And, it opened us, even though we didn't do that particular piece, we said, oh, let's find a piece that's similar to that's got those weird extended techniques. We're talking about Hymn to Aethon, I think.
So Head Ciudad. That's right.
Yeah. And so I was really super impressed with that. And so I said, okay, how do I do something like that that's appropriate for the group that I have in front of me? And so I had to go and do the legwork and research to find something like that. And then when we found it, it became something they instantly connected with, and we're like, this is strange, this is weird, let's latch onto it. And then we took it out and did that, and people were coming up to me and asking me, hey, that's a great piece of music, where do I find it, because I want to do it. And that's how new pieces take hold and just become, basically go viral. That's how that works,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love to program weird things. Of course, all the steady staples of the choral art that they need, but I like to throw in the mix some of those weird things that are just going to challenge my singers and challenge the listener, and then also other choirs that listen can kind of spin off of that and maybe take that and go down the rabbit hole a bit.
Yeah, and a lot of times the new pieces will elevate the staple pieces, because it makes you, especially if you're doing something like if you do a Bach piece and then a modern piece that have the same text or a similar instrumentation or something, that can make people go, oh, and they think about the instrument or they think about the text in a different way, because they're like, oh, I've only experienced this text that way. And then you say, okay, but have you heard it in German? Have you heard it in Swahili? Have you heard it somewhere in some different way? And then people go, oh, right. And it's just, they understand that music does not exist in the vacuum of their own experience. Like, people have heard the Hallelujah chorus and have interpolated it into a lot of things, some reverent, some not. And you have to allow yourself to experience those in the same way.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. So how would you describe then a typical rehearsal, and what would that look like under your direction?
My rehearsals are typically really high energy, in that if you can't tell, I'm a very sort of effervescent person. Like when I'm face to face, I have a lot of not nervous energy, but a lot of energy that needs to get out. And so it's a very physical kind of environment. We're standing, we're sitting, we're visualizing, we're physicalizing certain cutoffs and things. We're just putting it into our bodies so that we can allow our bodies to take over and do the singing part, while we occupy our brain with I have to breathe here, I have to shape here, I have to do this stuff. So there's a lot of kinesthetic stuff that happens. But there's also just a lot of straight, like sitting down and just kind of singing, because that's part of it, right? It's practice, and singing specifically is, it's a workout. It's a idea, and you have to get yourself in that mindset, in that I'm doing a physical activity with my whole body, so I need to be paying attention to all of my body. Singing makes you do that. Something else that's going on is I also understand that, especially in the high school classroom right now, our attention spans are shorter. And there's a lot of times where I have to take time out of the rehearsal and say, okay, everybody, take 20 seconds to close your eyes and let your brain sort of relax a little bit before we get back into it. So there's a lot of seems like it will almost like dead air, but there's some time that there's a lot of time you're going to feel where people are just sort of in the moment waiting because they need that break. Something that I've learned is that I have to incorporate kind of rapid fire talking to students to make sure that I've got all of them with me. And sometimes it's as simple as saying to a student right now, hey, I need everybody to turn your cameras back on. And then everybody goes, oh, right, because they're so used to being able to kind of blank out. And you can tell when somebody disengages when you've only seen them like this, right? So there's a lot of, are you all right? What are you doing? How are we, checking in kind of stuff. But I try to make sure that all of my rehearsals, they know that I've practiced just as much as I expect them to have practiced. And so when I'm working on something and I'm having problems with it from a hand standpoint or from a rehearsal technique standpoint, I have no problem stopping and saying, I'm having trouble with this. Does anybody have any ideas about how to make this better? Because I don't have all the answers. I should maybe technically, but I don't. And a lot of times a singer will know better than me because they're in it and they're doing it and they can just say, hey, this worked for me. Can we try this? And I say, yeah, let's do it, because this has to be better. That's the one thing that I wanted to do. All of my rehearsals there, you must be better every day, better than you were when you walked in here today, and your mileage may vary. Sometimes it's leaps and bounds. Sometimes it's, I remembered a pencil, and that's great. That's cool, So it's incremental progress. My rehearsals are all about incremental progress, and recapturing not only the way that something sounds, like chord sound or piece of sound, but I also try to recapture feeling and like crystallize feeling for ensembles, because a lot of times you can go over something physically and say, sing it this way, sing it this way, sing it this way, and they try it technically and they get it, but then if they don't link it to something in their brain and say, or their feelings, and say, this is how I felt when I sang this, or this is the emotion I'm trying to convey when I'm doing this line, then the memory doesn't last. But everybody remembers sort of that swelly feeling when everybody gets it together, or that really intimate feeling when everybody's down and quiet together. Everybody remembers that, and then they go, oh, I want to do that again. That whatever that is that makes your singers after that cutoff sort of shudder a little bit and go, ooh, let's do it again. That's what you're trying to recreate. And you want to make sure that everybody understands that. So my rehearsals are all about, do you remember? What do you feel? Is that okay? Like, how are we doing?
Yeah, there's maybe 2 or 3 things there that stick with me from your response. So first is, I appreciate that you're talking about things since the pandemic and how things have changed a bit, and especially in attention span. But I also feel like incremental progress is can be measured, and is great to kind of take stock of every rehearsal. Say, are you a little bit better today than you were yesterday? So the other thing that really stuck with me was the fact that you asked them, to say, how would you fix this? And maybe you do have the answers as the choral director, but that's a learning moment for them. It's an ability to vocalize a different way or a different method, maybe that's going through their head, of how to fix it. And I think that's where learning occurs. So
yeah, and when you ask a student, we're not in any field, but once you ask a student of any discipline to teach somebody or to tell you how they would do something better, it just makes them think about the thing that they were doing, maybe in a sort of passive way, and then it makes them sort of sit forward and go, oh, I have to actively talk about this and remember and vocalize what it is that I was doing. And that's hard. That's different, and kids don't do that very often, and it's good to make them.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Okay. So, sort of in the same lane here, what are some pointers or tips that you might have for emerging choral leaders?
Okay. So one of the things that I've learned over the years about there's a feeling in our careers there's always this feeling of being right on the cusp of the next thing, right? When we occupy a space and we're good and we're secure in our job and we're in our role and we're getting good at what the day-to-day, and overall how you feel, and you've got this idea of what your educational philosophy and your artistic philosophy is, you're always going to feel like you're right on the edge of the next thing, and all you need is that to get to the next thing. At that point, it was really important for me to remember scope, to operate within the scope that feels comfortable. So as a classroom teacher, your immediate scope is what you can do right there in your room. Now, if you take care of your room and you do good things through that, that scope ripples outward into other things, into other arenas. And people start to see the good things that happen in your scope. And as it ripples outward, it starts to affect them. And they will come and look for the things that you're doing, right? So I had to remind myself that you have to start small in order to be ready for the big thing that's going to happen. If you are all of a sudden thrust into the spotlight, you might not be ready to handle all of that. So while you look at people who are having their day in the sun and you want that for yourself, which is good, and it's okay to want that, you also have to remember, okay, am I actually ready for that? If that were to happen to me today, would I be ready for that? If not, what can I do within my scope to get ready for that? So our profession is one of those in that, and I say this in a loving, cheeky manner, that the better you are at this job, the more stuff that comes that you will have to do in this job. The better you are at it, the more responsibilities come. And the more you prove that you can do those responsibilities, the more things come, right? So it was maddening for me as a young teacher, for older, more established professionals to be like, your time's coming, honey, you just have to do this stuff first. And I'm like, okay. And as I kind of paid attention and got better at what I was doing, I've noticed that the responsibilities are coming, and people are looking at the classroom work and looking at the recordings and listening to in places that we've been, and they start going, oh yeah, you've got something to say. Why don't you come and tell us what you've got to say? Incremental progress. Again, it's one of those things that you just have to be ready for. This profession is super fast and very slow at the same time. Feast or famine with conductors at a certain level, man. They're my friends who are much more accomplished and quote unquote famous than me. I'm like, how are you doing all this? And they're like, this is this year. Next year, I will be performing literally no place because I will have done my time and I can't maintain the schedule. So do it once. Do 14 all states in 1 year if you want to, but just know that the next year you'll be at home, right? And that's fine, and that's okay. And that's the thing that I would tell everybody, is that you have to know and that the big giant national, international accolades are amazing, but the day-to-day influence that you have over the hundreds of students and singers that you see, that's way more important than getting a Carnegie Hall poster. And that's no shade to any of my friends who have them. It's just, I had to remember that for myself, that I was like, I'm not that person, and that's okay. I'm the best me that there is, and I'm the only me that there is. And I should leverage that instead of worrying about being the next blank. Derek Fox said that very famously in one of his sessions at National ACDA. I was so tired. He said, I was so tired of people asking me if I was going to be the next blank. But I was like, no, I'm the current Derek Fox. And I thought that was a really important thing to know and to internalize, that I'm the best and only me, and I should be that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's what you're saying is going to resonate with a lot of folks, and some of the other interviews I've done have said similar things, but not in the Doc WGT way. So yeah, I really appreciate that. The thing that kind of stuck with me there in your response was with great power comes great responsibility, but you kind of flipped it on his head a bit, where you kind of said with incremental progress, that responsibility and great power comes.
Yeah. It's proving that you can handle small scale responsibility and small scale power responsibly will show people that you're ready for bigger chairs to be in. if you can prove that, hey, I can, manage my little McDonald's franchise successfully, and then maybe they'll give you a couple more, who knows, but just do your thing in your scope.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So you mentioned this a little bit about, you may have 14 all states in one year, and then you may have nothing the next year, and you might need to do that. So leading to, what do you do for relaxation and to fight burnout?
Yeah. Big topic, burnout, for all of us right now. What has I've found to be the most effective thing to manage energy level and burnout and responsibility is firm boundary setting at the beginning of everything that you do, and holding yourself accountable to the boundaries yourself. So for instance, the culture that we live in right now of 24/7 availability and accessibility, I have a real problem with. Like, I used to participate in it. I'm a person who jokingly is eternally online. I'm a person who always has, my Black Mirror in my hand, and I know what's going on. But last year I said to myself, I gotta have a chance to not be at work. And so I made a decision that I said, I'm not going to have my work email on my personal phone. I'm just not going to do it. And that small change has totally lifted 20% of weight off of my shoulders, and I operate with 15% less cortisol in my brain, because I'm just not on edge about, oh my gosh, who's calling me, who needs me, because really, if it's super, super, super important, we have enough ways to get in touch with each other that you don't need to be able to email me at all times of the night. I mean, if it's really that serious, you can call me and we'll figure it out, right? But just that slight change has definitely happened, has definitely helped me, just moving that off of that. I tell this story in one of my in a session that I wrote a couple years ago, but there's a school district in France where the administration turns off the email server every day at 5 p.m. and doesn't turn it on again until 8 o'clock in the morning the next day, because they have set the expectation that this is a time for people to just have family time. And I'm a firm believer in the power of the out of office message, in that everybody understands that email is a part of life, but everybody also appreciates knowing that not only am I communicating with this person in this role, but it's actually a person behind the computer as well. So I like to, if I'm using an out of office message, I try to make it as funny and humorous as possible, so everybody knows that, hey, listen, I don't want to talk to you, but I'm going to let you know that it's in good fun that I don't want to talk to you. So it's like just using those little things that are requirements of our life, but putting your personal spin on it so people remembers that you're an individual instead of just an email address. That really does help. And it lets you be playful, and it lets you be individual while pointing to the system that we all live in and being like, hey, doesn't capitalism suck? It sure does. So let me make fun of it for just a little bit, And people appreciate that, because it puts it in perspective for people. So that's what I do to avoid burnout, is I'm just really 100% honest with people and say, this is silly. A lot of the expectations we have for each other societally and socially when it comes to work are silly, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And just participate in the joke, and then everybody just relaxes 20%. They just go, oh, we all understand that we can laugh at this. Not one of us is just be like, no, I need you to take my emails very seriously. I'm like, no, I'm not taking your emails seriously. It's July, shut up. Like, that's the kind of stuff you got to be willing to do. And again, not everybody is me, so not everybody's going to want that kind of mildly aggressive, playful attitude with everything. But it really just keeps me young, honestly, to be able to laugh and joke about sort of the tragic hellscape that we live in sometimes, but to be able to just laugh at it and have a good time with it. It's really important.
Yeah. And I've ascribed to a couple of those things that you do as well. I think you set the expectation for folks. If you reply to emails after hours, then they expect that you are available after hours.
Yeah. But, and people really realize, like, they give you, when you tell them at the beginning, hey, it's going to take me a day or two to get to this, they go in with that expectation, and it just allows you to let a situation cool off, because the immediacy of the email, it doesn't allow you to make any sort of correction once that's gone. And so I'm like, why are we pressuring each other to respond in the heat of the moment? Give me a chance to respond to you, because probably by the time I give you 24 to 48 hours, you've forgotten why you wrote this email. I've forgotten why you wrote it, and we're fine. And then the issue is not even that big of a deal anymore. What was hot is now not. And so it's just.
Yeah, I always go back to that. There are no emergencies in classical music.
Never has been. Never has been.
Right. Yeah, I approach things a little more, I think, stoically than you do. I'm just sort of flat affect. That's just the way that I am. But so maybe mine doesn't resonate as well as yours does. But I love that you put a little humor into your out of office message too.
I try.
I've received one, so yeah, I read it. It was fun. Okay, so now we're going to get into the Accelerando round. It's kind of like a lightning round. Just kind of quick answers. So first thing that comes to mind. So what is the worst job that you've ever had outside of choral music?
Worst job I ever had: singing waiter at an Italian restaurant. I was in college, and I got a job singing at a restaurant, and I got to sing rep that was not mine, like not in my voice part at all. And just, they were like, do you know this? I was like, sure. And so I would have to learn all these arias. It was awful. It was the worst job I've ever had.
Yep, I've done that too. I understand completely where you're coming from. Yep, I had a book of about 50 that I had to cycle through that were.
Oh man, and then they do the group number once an hour, and I'm like, I never actually learned it, and so I was like, I'm just singing mock Italian. It was great. It was great.
Absolutely. So, what's your guilty pleasure bad food to eat?
Ooh, okay. So I recently got over my guilt of ordering DoorDash for myself. And so I've been ordering a lot of buffalo wings recently. It's trashy. My husband hates them, and he's like, why do you eat those all the time? I was like, because they're great.
They're delicious. That's why.
They are delicious. They're great. They're handheld. I love them.
Absolutely. If you had to do any other job besides being a musician of some kind, what would that be?
I would love to design furniture. I've always thought that designing sofas and chairs and sectionals and tables and stuff, I've always thought that was a really cool job, and I've always wanted to learn how to do it.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Random.
No, very cool. I like that. What is the scariest moment in your life, or what is your biggest phobia?
Oh, okay. I think the scariest moment of my life. Oh, I went under anesthesia once for a surgery thing, and when I was a kid, I had like a near miss with anesthesia, like something that somebody caught at the end. So I've always been a little wary of it. But as an adult, I like went in for something and voluntarily went under anesthesia. And the lady who was there was really, really comforting. And she's like, are you really, really, really scared of this stuff? Like, I am, actually. And so she was like, I will walk with you and I will hold your hand. I was like, thank you so much. And so I did it, and I started to get a little bit loopy from it. And I was like, now don't let me say anything embarrassing, and the lady was like, you were fine. So I was scared for that, but.
Okay. I don't know what to call that. Anesthesia phobia, maybe.
Yeah. It's one of those near miss kind of things. I guess once you find out something almost didn't go right, you're a little bit afraid of it for the rest of your life a little bit. And so that was one of those things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for good reason, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. What four people would you put on the choral Mount Rushmore?
Okay, so this is a hard question for me because I want to answer it in a way that honors that like sort of acknowledges the problematic nature of Mount Rushmore and some sort of stuff like that. But instead of like specific people, I would do sort of a representation of roles. And so I would say you would have to have a teacher kind of conductor role as one of the faces. You'd have a singer role as one of the faces. You'd have a piano or playing role. And then the fourth space would be a blank space to account for people who are unknown or forgotten, or people who have not existed yet that might influence the art form in a way that we have not anticipated. So that's how I would do that. Instead of people, sorry, I have a little bit of a spill here. Instead of people, I would have sort of more the generic role that we do as choral people. Because the most important things that you need, as a conductor, you have to be a good teacher / conductor, you have to be a good singer / musician, you got to be able to play some sort of instrument, whether it's piano or auto harp or whatever you're playing. And then you have to be open to the possibility of the art form changing, because it's constant and it's in motion constantly, and we don't know. And once you commit something to stone, you can't alter it unless you break it. So
yeah, I love that. That's a very creative answer. Nobody's answered that way before. So again, another very Dr. WGT way.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
What is a secret talent that most people would be surprised to learn about you?
I am a very accomplished pageantry arts person. So I am a color guard, winter guard guy. I performed in WGI indoor color guard when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I am a pretty good flag, rifle, saber kind of kid.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't know that about you.
It follows, like, as a prospect, like as a band director, kind of proto band director when I was growing up, it sort of followed that I kind of leaned towards the pageantry arts as an extension of just being a band kid, but pageantry arts is one of those things that it allows music nerds to be athletes, and I really like it. As far as a synthesis of arts and athletics, it's one of the cooler ones. And I've always enjoyed it. That's just it's a thing that I just spent a lot of time on when I was younger, that I just am good
Yeah,
at.
for sure. And as a specifically choir person, and I've never delved into the band world aside from touring with rock bands, but I've never heard it called pageantry arts before. But is that an industry specific term?
Yeah, because for sure, the indoor stuff, Winter Guard International, WGI, has always been kind of known as sport of the arts. And so indoor color guard, DCI, outdoor marching band, that kind of stuff all falls under that umbrella of pageantry arts. Yes, that's what those are called.
Got it. Learned something new today. Thank you. What is something that you spend way too much money on?
Oh, dice, D&D dice.
Really? Okay.
I'm a giant Dungeons and Dragons nerd. Like, it's one of the things that I love almost more than almost anything else. Like, when it comes to free time activities, if it's D&D, I love it. And one of those unfortunate kind of side effects of that is that you just develop this urge to have a bunch of them. Like, for instance, like this big dice bag full of dice.
Yeah.
It's a thing. And so, as far as, like, people ask me, oh, well, teachers' secret Santa gifts or blah, blah. I'm like, just buy me dice, guys. That's what I like. They're pretty, and they're stand-ins for, like, jewelry. Like, you can have little precious gem kind of looking things. It's a thing I spend a lot of money on, and a lot of gift requests on. People ask me, what do you want? Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That can also tie back into your, fighting burnout question. So yeah. Play some D&D.
D&D is definitely something that is, we talked a little bit about during the pandemic. Like, we were all societally looking for some control, really. And D&D is one of those things where, since you are the one who creates the rules of the place, you can it was a great way to maintain a sense of order, that we were, even if it was fantastical things that were happening, we still were kind of running things. And so that weird disconnection that we had with each other during the early parts of the pandemic, at least I found we were able to solve by coming up with different ways to play D&D, be it virtually like this or whatever. We found a way to do it, and it was increase our connectivity. So
well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, last question for the Celerando round before we hit Tempo Presto. So if you could have any superpower, what would that be?
Languages. the ability to comprehend and or mimic languages by hearing them and experiencing them, that is what I want more than anything, because that's the hardest part, is being cut off or disconnected from my fellow human beings because I don't understand them. And I feel like if I were able to understand, the more that I'm able to understand, the better I would be as a citizen of the planet, because I would understand what people needed. So yeah, languages.
That's cool. We'll call you Super Babble. Maybe.
Right.
That's cool. All right. So that's the end of the cello round. Thanks for doing that with me.
Of course.
So back to some choral music questions. What is another, who is another choral musician that you might like to lift up?
Okay. So we're all in the trenches, like a lot, everybody who teaches choir, no matter what the level, we're just out here doing the best that we absolutely can. And one of my colleagues here in Dallas, she is the director of choirs at Green Hill here in it's a private school here in Dallas. Her name's Dr. Lucic Abrahamian, and she and I studied together at a masterclass once, and she's one of the, just from a raw, just musician standpoint, she's just a monster. She can play anything, she can sing anything, she speaks like, casually 20 something languages. Like she's just a casual polyglot, and she just has this great incisive manner with music, but she's also a great teacher. And so I just know that she's out here just crushing it every day. And because she's private school in Texas doesn't get the same shine as public school in Texas does. But I like to tell people about her, and she's she's started an alternative to sing, a new treble singing group here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is great. And she understands the necessity of inclusivity when it comes to that voice part and that voice type. And she's doing it. And I love her for it.
We'll say her name again so we can get it out there.
So it's Lucic Abrahamian. She's going to kill me for doing this, but that's my girl. That's my girl.
Well, that's who you chose to lift up. So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So what goals do you have for next school year, 2024, your choice, but what are you looking forward to?
Well, fingers crossed at the end of the week, Southwest ACA invited choirs come out. So I'm hoping for that a little bit. I'm excited about that. I'm nervous about that. This past year was kind of, for me, was my year of service. Like I did a lot of committee work. I did a lot of volunteering in the field. So I did a lot of that. I made more connections and kind of just got myself to know some people. And so I think for myself, I'm going to try to rotate around that in the kind of my goals. And so after coming from service, now this next year is probably going to be a scholarship year for me. I'll probably, I got to refine some of these presentations that I like to write and see if any of them are prime ground to be expanded out into something else. Cause I got a lot of ideas in this brain, and I kind of want to make some space. And so just write some stuff out and see if it's good, and, trot it around to some of my friends and just ask them, hey, what are you working on? What are you writing? Can I read some of it so I can remember what it means to do the academic part of this job? So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, is a writing year for me, I think. I'm pushing the Booker T students. They don't know kind of what's coming for them. I've got some pretty hot music for them, some stuff that they've not heard before that they don't know a lot about, which I'm excited. One of my things is I pay attention to people, and I hold conversations that I have with people, like I remember them. And so my programming for this year is a lot of pieces that I've heard that we've talked about in conversation, that conductors or composers have been like, hey, I've got this piece, you should really think about doing it. Sure, let's do that. And so this is going to be one of those. This is going to be the year of, I think, conversations, just music that has come to me from odd sources. And then I like to write programs in my spare time. I just like to write chorals, like shows, just in case I ever need one, or if a friend is like, oh, I need an idea for a concert. I have no idea. But I have a title for a concert that I'm going to flesh out, and I think it's going to be really funny. And I think it would be one of those presentations that doesn't happen. So I would like to do a choral concert that's called Hits of the 80s, 90s, and Today. But they're choral pieces from like 16, 17, 1880, 16, 17, 18, 1990, and then choral music that's like from the past couple of years or whatever, and set the whole concert with like a radio DJ, like it's old Rick Dees in the Weekend Top 40, and just be like, it's choral music from the 80s, 90s, and today. Like I think it would be really, really hilarious as a real serious classical concert, but with this just wild 50s DJ going on at the same time. I think it would be hilarious. So I'm going to try that.
I would come to that concert.
Yeah, and I think it would be hilarious. And I also want to write. I want to write a concert program or a concert concept idea in 3 dimensions. The idea being, and I kind of played with it last year, but I didn't do it, is that do sound mapping of the way that the pieces sound, right? Just kind of look at what the sound waves kind of look like. And then instead of using a traditional riser setup, have each singer have an individually like sort of heighted box that they stand on. And so at different points in the song, different singers stand at different points. So we mimic the sound pattern of that. And if you need to highlight a part, pull them up so you can hear what the altos sound like right here, and then pull them back down to the floor, and then sort of play with that. Because we tell singers to sing like this, play with this color, play with this idea, blah, 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 but then we don't ever manipulate the space. And once a concert hall is built, it's kind of done. And so I want to play with the idea of the interior space of the concert hall is still changing and still modular, so we can play with what that is. So that's just kind of stuff that I want to do. And that's what the summertime is about, is letting those weirdo ideas that you have that come to you on a Thursday afternoon in a faculty meeting, and you say, oh, I need to spin that out, but I don't have the time. No, that's what now is for, is to say, what would that sound like? How would you do that? What would the pieces be? How does that, what value does that add actually? Is it a good idea, or is it just new? Right? That's a real thing. So
Yeah, that idea, man, that's one that connects the visual with the auditory, and yeah, that's really cool.
And it would be a great way. And this is me kind of speaking from my own like particular experience at the school that I work at, but it would be a great way to then integrate the, the sound engineering kids, or the recording studio kids, or like, people who are into acoustics can like talk about that and say, oh, this is actually why that sounds like that. And if you were to play with your choir and move this way, this is what that would change. And then you bring it to the audience and say, hey, we're going to pull the curtain back a little bit, and we're going to show you, and in real time, how do you manipulate the choir on stage to make the sound different? And then people go, ooh, and they are then more, prone to giving or experiencing or whatever, because they know how the sausage gets made. If you only serve people the finished product, they come to expect product only, and they will never respect your process. And so you have to educate your audiences on process if you want them to appreciate it. So that's kind of why we do it, is no longer, if there's anything that I could say is my main kind of thrust of artistic purpose or educational purpose, is just to let people, to encourage people to become more active participants in the art that they consume, as opposed to just expecting it to be passively delivered to them, finished product all at the same time. We have to push our audiences and our singers and our administrators and everybody to just, not only is this an artistic pursuit, but it's also an academic exercise, and it's a cultural preservation that we're doing. So this is not just kids getting together to sing pretty songs in 4 parts. This is the continuation of our culture as like humanity. And this is what we're doing. And by giving people some vision that they don't normally have, it allows them to invest in the process. And that's how you get, well, I'm not a singer. Yeah, but you're here every week and you're listening and you're talking and you're going and hearing other music, and you're educating yourself, and you just, it lifts us all.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that way. I call it taking apart the machine and putting it back together in front of people. So I love what you're saying. It very much resonates with me. I hope more people espouse that method of just let people see what you're doing, even the ugliness of maybe the day-to-day rehearsal, the beginning parts of the rehearsal process, when you've just introduced a piece, let them see that. And
again, I don't mind if people, one of the greatest part of being an artist is stealing stuff. And so if people hear ideas and please use it if you want to hear. But like with the idea, what we've been doing with the pandemic now, a lot of us have stopped using physical programs and we're using digital programs. Do you understand the potential that we have with digital programming to expand the concert experience past what people are seeing? If you make a true online resource for the concert that you're giving, where people can click through and hear, this is what this sounded like when we passed it on day one. This is midway through. This is the dress rehearsal right before it. This is what you hear. This is what singers are saying about this piece as they rehearse it. Here's us talking about the text and people having that breakthrough moment when they go, oh, that's what that means. Oh, when we're talking about this is actually about, and that allows people to understand, hey, this is an experience that can go through my whole life, like my whole existence outside of the concert hall, because you take a physical program, you take it home, you maybe look at it, but then you kind of set it down. You can keep a tab open on your phone forever. And you can go back and be like, hey, what was that piece that I heard at the blah, blah, blah? Oh, I have it here. So the world is changing and the choral art needs to change with it. So we've got these resources, we've got these tools. Why not use them in a creative way? The rise of AI in the music classroom is actually going to revolutionize the way we teach. For good or for ill, that's up to us. But it is going to change the way that we do this, because it is going to take away a lot of barriers. Program notes used to be absolutely just awful. But with a little bit of AI help, I'm not saying just let it do it and then whatever. No, that's dumb. But if you engage with the tool in a responsible manner, just like you would engage with music in a responsible manner, it's just a tool. The tool itself is not good or evil. What we do with it determines that. So we got a bunch of people who can use this ethically, and I think they will. And I think we will, if we don't get afraid.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, I have really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to connect?
Of course. You can find me on Facebook, search my name, William George-Twyman. George-Twyman is hyphenated. If you want to email me about anything that you've heard, any questions that you may have, my email address is my name, William George-Twyman, this way, no hyphen, @gmail.com. We'll put it all in the doobly-doo down there if you need it. But yeah, if you need me ever, if you have questions about a piece of music, a question about can I do this, a question about should I do this, stuff like that. I'm not the oracle. I'm not a monolith. I don't speak for everybody. I can just give you honest opinions and research-based facts if I've got them. Yeah, I'm here as a resource. I'm here to talk. I love to do it. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining me today. And this should come out maybe in the next week or so we can look for it then. And
anytime.
I know that folks are going to really enjoy your answers here. So thanks again.
Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Bye.